Welcome to another episode of Galactic Ambassadors podcast. My name is Julia Balaz. I'm joining you today from Ireland on the 18th of July, 2023. And today I'm joined by Lizz Grace, coming to us from Portland, Oregon in the USA. And we're in the wonderful energies of new moon in Cancer. I certainly had just a really good ancestral clearing and realization and epiphany about something connected to Cancer archetype, connected to the past and the ancestors. So I wonder if the conversation today will also bring something that can bring us to the next level, to the next expression of our ancestors, as we are the living hope of our ancestors, right? So welcome, Lizzie, and congratulations on becoming certified quantum soul guidance practitioner as you focus on galactic astrology, soul reading, and actually so much more. I feel so blessed and grateful every time a new practitioner comes in with richness of experience with astrology and soul reading and assisting others to find answers and healing that they're looking for. And you certainly have quite a bit of astrology study. Your passion is clearly there for astrology, and even, like I could say, forming a certain niche, which we'll talk about today. Welcome, Lizzie. Well done. And where would you like to start in terms of sharing a little bit about your past, your story that led you to starting to dive deep, really deep into astrology?
Hi, yeah, thank you for letting me be here. I'm so blessed to get to be here, I suppose. So my path with astrology started in around 2017. I was living in Kansas City, Missouri at the time, and I was going to an art school there. And I'm a born and raised California girl. So when I moved to Missouri, I kind of stood out like a sore thumb. I found myself having a pretty big culture shock experience and also in a massive time of isolation. Whereas when I lived in California for 22 years, I had pretty much a flourishing life that I left and then put myself in a location where I had physically no family around me and my friends weren't there, and I was having a hard time connecting with the environment around me. So I found astrology. And I found numerology and other basically metaphysical or occult practices. I had so much time by myself. I was really starting to tune into the subtleties of the things I was reading. I felt like the universe around me was starting to communicate. And I look back on that time now, and as much as it was difficult for me to get through, it was so beautiful to realize that I was communicating with the universe, and it was becoming like my friend and my ally. So when I graduated from art school and I moved back to the West Coast, I decided to move to Portland, Oregon, because I kind of feel like there's an interesting fusion of the Midwest, southern area of like Missouri and the West Coast that is the West Coast. Because there was a lot of lessons to be learned from where I lived in Missouri. And so returning back to the West Coast, I wanted a little bit of that flavor. So here I am, and I'm still communicating with the universe, and I'm building a community out here that's very supportive. Basically has helped me become a professional astrologer. There's other people outside of the community in Portland that I've been blessed to create relationships with, such as Thomas Miller, who is a professional astrologer on the Astrology podcast. And I've also been blessed to meet other astrologers here in the Pacific Northwest that are kind of more from the Seattle area, because turns out the Pacific Northwest is a hub for astrologers because of Kepler College and the whole lineage that exists out there. So I feel like I came to astrology out of somewhat of a necessity for where I was in my life from isolation. But moving forward with astrology and communicating with the universe and whatnot and tuning into the symbols that exist in one's birth chart has kind of helped me, I guess, naturally grow closer to astrology, because I feel like there's a part in my birth chart signatures that are kind of pushing me down this rabbit hole further. And I think as being a professional astrologer and experiencing that personally, it's also like juice to why I'm, I guess, sitting in front of you.
Oh, absolutely. It sounds like the first departure from everything you've known. It's total by the book classic archetype of the hero's journey, right? Where you really have to be unrooted to find the greatest gems of your being and kind of prove yourself in the world, recreate a new reality for you. And look how wonderfully you've done it in such a short amount of time as well. Like, really kudos to you for navigating it so well. And I wonder if it was perhaps the astrology that offered you clarity early on into your journey of being out in the world by yourself. Would you say so?
I think I moved to Missouri around my Jupiter return. So I think, yeah, there was some nudging in the astrology chart. I do think it's interesting that I chose in that time passage of a Jupiter return to just completely alienate myself from basically what I would perceive as a vital, thriving 22-year-old lifestyle. However, I suppose that's exactly what I needed, was to go and expand in ways that I couldn't even fathom.
When we look at your chart, if I may share some of it, you have strong Sagittarius in the seventh house. So the sun in Sagittarius, moon in Sagittarius. Your North Node is in Sagittarius. So it is all about kind of exploring the unknown and traveling to far places, distant places, and not just physically, but also with your mind, right? And I feel when we look at the stars alignments, your moon conjunct the royal star Antares, I find that's such a powerful, positive omen for your relationships experience. And it sounds to me from what you're saying that you have been blessed with really positive relationships that are allowing you to expand your horizon and really explore your mind, and whether through astrology or esoterics, that you can have those really juicy conversations with your friends. Would you say so? And as well, I see there Super Galactic Center sextiling your sun from Sagittarius in the seventh house, Ophiuchus conjunct your North Node. So can you see how that's kind of reflected in those deep, expansive conversations that you experience through relationships?
I have definitely been tuning into that in the last couple of months, because people will just let me talk. And then I'll get to a point where I'm like, are you following? They're like, I just like hearing you talk. And I've been getting more comfortable with that at this stage in my life. And I think it's really beautiful. And also with all that galactic knowledge, I think I've been tuning into the concept of channeling a lot of different types of beings and having the ability to kind of say things at the right time and not really know where it's coming from. Galactic astrology has somewhat allowed me, I would say, to consciously tune to that. Whereas I think in the past, I've always been doing it, but just been way more disconnected to what was coming through.
I wonder if your strong eighth house planets also have anything to do with your deep passion for everything that's hidden, like esoterics or astrology. Certainly, I see people often have planets in the eighth house when they are into astrology. So you have Venus in Capricorn, conjunct Lyra star, and also your Uranus in the eighth house, conjunct Lyra, and Neptune in Capricorn, conjunct Lyra. So there's a really powerful stellium. So I wonder how you feel about your connection to Vega and Sirius star systems, which, manifest as easy or effortless channeling and bringing high frequency information through for others to help them realize their higher potential. So perhaps you kind of have been surprising yourself as you offer yourself in service to others, that just kind of naturally comes true. It's like you've been doing this for many other lifetimes. I wonder if you've heard before that you may have been an astrologer in other lifetimes, or a seer, or a guide, or a healer, certainly with such a strong Vega Sirius connection.
So I would say Lyra and Vega was the first star beings that I feel like I communicated with. It started with this little whispering in the back of my mind being like, Lyra, just I didn't really understand what it was. And then weirdly enough, the people around me were receptive, like this new friend group that I just made. It was in 2020. So we're kind of potting out at that time in our little separate areas. And the people that I had access to were newer friends to me, but they seemed to know what I was talking about. And I found that really interesting. I've learned, I think, more since then compared to what they shared with me, because they seem, now that I reflect on it, to have a pretty basic understanding of star seeds and whatnot. But it was enough fuel to make me keep looking into it. And then I had this experience where I was really into, and I still am, like breathing techniques, specifically like the Wim Hof technique. And I was doing a lot of that breathing, and I was finding that I was like getting all these channeled messages. And I remember I had this like really interesting experience where I was like thinking about the vagus nerve and how like that was stimulated in the breathing I was having. And then it turned into this whole exploration with like Vega, and then to like real life. It's just, this is how I've kind of like gotten further into astrology, is that's what I'm saying with the universe communicating with me. It's just really interesting. And I've found that like even star beings use that as a way of communicating. I would say with like the whole ancient past of being a seer, I've kind of starting to feel that, yeah, that is there, but I think I was like also maybe like a little bit of a spy, or in some regards, like very connected to many different types of people, beings, so much to the point that I think I sacrificed my own being in a way. Like I wasn't really properly able to express myself because of that South Node in Gemini in the first house. Makes me feel like there was some part of me that I suffocated because of all these connections with so many different types of beings.
That's so interesting. Do you know what I would see another validation of the story you just shared? Your Saturn in Aquarius in 10th house is squaring a crux star within 1 degree orb. So I would see that totally as a validation to what you just said from my experience anyway, with that star, certainly in that position and in square. And perhaps the communication revival theme is there also with your ascendant conjunct Pleiades, and I think your Pluto as well. Just ascendant.
Part of fortune was, I think,
just ascendant conjunct Pleiades. Yeah, that's really good on the communication. But I am intrigued again seeing Beta Centauri, Hadar star, in your chart, and let's transition with this to your work with twin flames and really looking deeply at astrology of twin flames. So your Pluto in Scorpio in the 6th house of service, is conjunct Beta Centauri star Hadar. Also your Mercury, high degrees of Scorpio in 6th house, conjunct Beta Centauri Hadar. So I am not surprised at all that you feel guided towards really exploring the dynamics and the profound lessons that can come through twin flame experience. And so can you tell us a little bit about your experience with which techniques in astrology you apply to support your clients that have questions about their twin flame relationships?
Yeah, so I use synastry, which is basically taking two individuals' natal charts and putting them on top of each other. And then composite, which is, I believe, taking the midpoints of individuals' charts and then creating one specific chart that is basically the alchemic embodiment of two individuals. So I'll look at those three charts. I also look at the two individuals' natal charts separately to tune into their energies and kind of understand the specific archetypes of those two individuals, and then go through the whole process of synastry and then composite. And through looking at all those charts, I basically intuit stories that I write down. And the way that I am kind of able to organize those stories is through just looking at three specific aspects out of all of those charts I just explained. And then I write a little anecdote, and what ends up coming out is something for these people to read and have their own imagination work on. they can tune into themselves with my words. I don't intend to tell people exactly how it was in a past life, word for word. It's just really to jog their own memories so that they can understand karmic rhythms that are appearing within the relationship. And one thing I find really profound in the whole process of doing it is that I really don't know pretty much anything about the two people's information, like individually, other than their birth time, their name, and the date and place. It's been pretty profound. The reason I really got into it is because there's a person that I know locally in Portland who works specifically with twin flames and coaches them. And so he asked me to look into some of his clients. They were, of course, knew that I was doing it and they wanted me to do it. So they willingly gave the information over, but that's how I got these people. Basically, it was through, his name's Rob Love, Robbie Love, Love Now. You can look him up online if you're interested. But yeah, so I know very little about these people. I just write the reports and then they basically email me and they're like, that's so profound. Like I've had meetings after these reports where I am just, they're like, how did you do it? And I'm like, well, Cancer North Node, Capricorn South Node interacting in this way. And they're like, holy crap, like you're so right. Like I can feel it. And it's been really crazy too with like not knowing anything and then writing out a whole report for these people and then being able to see a pattern through just 3 aspects. Like I written a report recently and I think the pattern I realized was there was an element of almost like unorthodox friendship occurring so much in their past lives that there was a lot of benefit in the relationship between them consistently, but one of them would always have to sacrifice a part of their own identity, such as like a cultural identity to exist with the other person. So there was like a buildup of karma that was occurring like back and forth between them. And it was just really difficult for them to understand it in this present incarnation because they do get along, but there's like this almost like insidious resentment because in past lives they've had to exchange, basically sacrificing their own ancestral lineage to the benefit of the relationship. It was just wild. Like after pinpointing those 3 aspects and then rereading the whole report for myself, I was like, oh, there's the pattern. So it's another conversation with the universe and also just being open to like whatever the symbols are communicating to me and then me tuning into archetypes so that I can basically give it to people in a way that jogs their imagination and then they can understand why they're interacting with people the way they are. And it gives them a lot of peace. Like they might not get a resolution from me, but it can at least give them something to understand and work on.
So powerful. And especially because these are past lives, soul memories, it's hidden, it feels undersurface. People can really almost tangibly feel the energy that is kind of murking in the relationship. Mentally, everything is fine. They understand each other. There is love, but there is something that they feel is just in the way of, greater clarity, greater love, greater peace, greater harmony, and they just don't know what it is. You cannot see it because it is in the subconscious. It is in the DNA in the soul records. Unless you're really trained to tap into those fields of consciousness, of information, you will be stuck until you either train yourself, dive into it, or perhaps have other profound experiences that sometimes occur spontaneously during certain transits. But the amazing route is to go to a trained practitioner such as yourself, where suddenly it's right there. And I believe there is resolution in that, because once you bring light to something that was hidden, automatically it starts dissolving, or certainly, when something is seen, it can be healed. So it's so powerful. One more comment I want to say here, that I really want to applaud you for carefully or skillfully picking 3 hot topics from any synastry chart or composite chart, where you work with, actually, you called it celestial connections chart, right?
Mm-hmm.
A really awesome name for this type of powerful work. I recall when I reviewed your certification reports that really stood out for me, that I know you have such a vast amount of information. I could tell that you've studied astrology deeply and passionately, and you could go down so many different routes, and it can really be overwhelming for clients to receive a huge comprehensive report. But I really saw how amazing it is to just focus on top 3 issues, top 3 alignments or patterns that are really coming out. And oh my God, they can work with that for so long. So I'm really starting to become a big fan of more condensed or shorter versions of these galactic astrology, quantum soul guidance reports. I feel it can almost be like more powerful, more acute. You can do a lot of work with it, and perhaps then get another reading in a month or 2, and then do another big quantum leap, and perhaps it's a matter of personal preference, where others might love this big, huge report and work with it for 2 years on their own, each to their own. I used to do really long, 1.5 hour long readings, and I love them. But now, as I saw your style of delivery, I just loved it. It was like, oh my God, simple and amazing. But so thank you for sharing that story, giving us an example of how unique it can be, and how really you know nothing about them, and yes, the information is right there, it's presented, you share it, and they're like, oh my God, you totally read me through and through. So that's the power of astrology. It's interesting that we're coming together today talking about twin flame astrology, twin flame topic. It's great to know that there are many other people that are dedicating their time and energy to this topic, because it seems like a lot of people are struggling with deep relationships that are very intense, very maybe magnetic or electric or emotional. There's so many different ways, and it's nice to see that people are becoming more and more okay with seeking help outside of their relationship. That's really beautiful thing to see, whereas maybe just 2 decades ago it was a big taboo, like people were ashamed to come to third person with their issues. And maybe, I'm sorry for having such a long monologue, but this could be a really nice way for many couples may be more comfortable with just, okay, I give you my details and tell you nothing else and see what you come back to me with. Because perhaps with some of the psychology sessions, maybe either male or female in the couple may feel really challenged by needing to talk about their feelings and share their story. This alternative may be much more comfortable for them, right? Have you ever thought about that?
I actually didn't think about that, like nuance and subtlety to it. So yeah, if that is something where people can feel like it's more accessible, then I'm definitely happy to offer that. One thing I kind of came out, I think whenever I had this meeting with Rob and 2 other clients where I was talking to them about the Celestial Connections report, Rob was talking about how now more than ever, the planet is ready to receive the union of twin flames. So there's just in general a higher amount of this conversation going on because the frequency is rising. And so as much as we want to be cynical and be like, oh, everyone's just talking about twin flames, like they don't know what they're talking about. I'm like, well, I think it's a reflection of where we're at right now. Is we are at a very pivotal point in like the Earth's evolution spiritually where we can come together. So like these big energies are finding themselves near each other, and we need each other and outside people to help with that energetic connection. And that I thought was a really beautiful perspective.
Absolutely. Makes so much sense. So I will look forward to learning more and more about this kind of archetypal dynamic. And just tomorrow we'll have our group call within the private Quantum Soul Guidance Practitioners community, where everyone will chip in with their discoveries, as we have few others who are kind of fine-tuning onto this particular topic. So if there'll be anything really extraordinary and special, we will probably share it on this channel in the coming weeks. Is there actually? Would it be okay if we showed your website?
Yeah, let's go.
It really made me smile because apart from being passionate about astrology, you also are an artist, right? You love expressing yourself through fashion art. Would that be a correct way of saying it?
Yeah, so I did go to art school. I mentioned that earlier. Definitely an artist, have been my whole life. Started with drawing and painting as my first love, and then I evolved into making clothes. So I kind of look at the clothes that I make as artwork because it's really involved. I hand draw everything. I hand silk screen it onto the fabric. Also hand make the clothes with a sewing machine.
And you offer custom made orders too, right? That's so rare to see and so exciting to know that if I have an idea, a vision, I can come to Liz and he will help me make it a reality.
Yeah, I've been really into making leggings lately for people, that also a lot of graphic t-shirts that involve zodiac symbols and things like that. So if you go to the shop page, it actually would show you more of recent, I guess, things that I create.
Cool. Plenty to choose from there. Mm-hmm. That's really good. I loved your homepage. You know, do you believe in extraterrestrial? When you look up at the night sky, do you feel a sense of nostalgia? Are you curious about past lives? Are you seeking to know thyself more? You've come to the right place. And then you've also been on quite a few podcasts, and actually you've been approved as featured astrologer on the Fun Astrology podcast. Am I right? For this year?
Yeah, the Fun Astrology podcast with Thomas Miller. Thomas Miller is a really big inspiration to me. He has a bunch of audio and video background. He has been on radio shows for decades, and now he has his own called the Fun Astrology podcast. And it's almost like a weather report every single day of what's going on in the skies. So I think that's really awesome. And I got to meet him last year, and we striked up a friendship, and he honestly was just really encouraging towards me being a professional. And I didn't take that lightly. I was a little in shock. I was like, I respect you so much, and you think that I'm good enough to do this professionally? And he was just like, unshakably yes. And I'm like, wow, thanks. So yeah, I've been featured on his podcast. I think that's pretty cool.
After seeing your astrological chart and seeing the powerful star alignments in conjunction within 1 degree to most of your planets, and having strong, stelliums in relevant houses, like, I'm not surprised at all. It really speaks volumes of long soul history where you are involved in this kind of work. So really awesome that you have arrived at this point so early on in your life, and I'll just be excited to see you grow and shine and share your discoveries and more awesome stories. Is there any particular maybe message or story, anything else that you wanted to share on the podcast today that you can think of? I'm just curious, when you have studied few other astrology techniques and courses, how was your experience with adding fixed stars or seeing stars added, kind of seeing the extension of astrology with Galactic Astrology? How was your experience with the course?
Was really excited to even have the ability to study it, because I was introduced to fixed stars, I think in 2018, towards the end of 2018. And I was reaching out to astrologers at the time, and they were just like protecting the information. Like it felt really inaccessible. Like they really wanted me to give fair enough. Like, I do think we should be paying astrologers for their time and energy. However, it just made me stop right there. Mm-hmm. So when I found your course through one of my friends, I was a little mind blown, because I was just excited to have basically a book, if available, that I could reference and learn more about. So I think with the expansion of Galactic Astrology, it just deepens some of the archetypes and symbolism that was already kind of formulating in front of me with just traditional astrology. So adding that galactic layer, I guess to me just feels like it felt like a necessary step in my knowledge. I don't really know how else to put it. Like, yes, it's definitely deepened my experience. It also just feels really natural as far as a line of study for me. So it makes sense for me to do it. And I've noticed that the people who are attracted specifically for galactic astrology are also really like, it's like they're thirsty for more information because they think they've experienced maybe some gatekeeping or a little bit of mystery around it. And I think it should be something that is a little bit more accessible for people. So I was really excited to get introduced to your work. And it too was a natural flow. A friend of mine showed me an interview with you and Pam Gregory, and it was basically onward from there. Yeah.
Thank you for all that. I'm curious about the galacticmythology.com name. I love that you chose that name for your website. And I really hope you will bring more of the stars. Obviously, when your clients will be looking for that information in the synastry, in the relationship reading, I feel from my experience that there's so much information there when we look at the history, when the galactic history of the relationships, because we really are ancient as souls. We go so far back in terms of some of our soul connections. Maybe I'm biased. Maybe it's not really everyone and large globally, but I don't know. Just there are thousands of people that came into my point of view and my connection, and they seem to be ancient. They seem to be connected to stars far and wide. So I'm really excited that you're going to be able to add stars to your twin flames and relationships reports and see what unravels there, especially if you have this pure channel coming through with information that's relevant, being able to tune into the soul records effortlessly. I just normally, sometimes I would see flowers coming through me when I'm really joyful. Today I see white doves, like hundreds of them, just pouring out with excitement for the path that's here for you. So I hope that's a really, really beautiful, beautiful omen for your path ahead. How did you?
Yeah, I've been definitely tuning in for the doves.
Yeah. Was there a particular reason why you picked galactic mythology? And what about the word mythology there?
Mythology and archetypes being a way for our imaginations to connect to our past. I think I was realizing that there's such a rhythm of stories throughout time. And so using the tool of mythology and storytelling as a vehicle to help us get closer to ourselves, I realized that these rhythms do expand beyond just Earth. Galactic mythology feels in resonance with this concept that there's stories outside of Earth. And so when you look into sort of any fixed star, there's an archetype that it embodies. And so it echoes out. And I've been figuring out how to have a podcast. And I really knew that I wanted to have it to be about astrology and about mythology. And so I suppose when I started taking your course, I had this epiphany of like, oh, it echoes out beyond the Earth. And I was like, oh, galactic mythology, I'm going to go buy that domain right now.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Excellent. Really, really awesome download, and well done. May that name bring you many blessings, and may others be attracted to it and then expand with you. So exciting. All right, you also have several social media accounts, so people can find you under galacticmythology.com, but also YouTube under Galactic Mythology. Then your Facebook, Instagram, or just Linktree Galactic Mythology will include the links in the. Just one more message from you to the students, anyone who kind of just starts on their journey of diving into astrology or galactic astrology, soul reading. What would you say to them? Because you managed to bring in huge amount of information in relatively short amount of time, and kind of gaining confidence early enough to work with others. It seems almost like life pushed you. You had no choice and you just had to say yes. But what would you say to those that are kind of just starting on this journey, or even just contemplating it and not sure if they can do it because it's so much? Any guidance you can offer them?
If you truly want to do it, you'll keep doing it. With that being said, don't let all the information overwhelm you, because I started my astrological journey without an end goal. I've been able to accumulate information. Yeah, maybe it was pretty quick, but it felt almost effortless because I wasn't in a comparison state for most of it. And I feel like because of that, I was able to really absorb information through about 2017 until now. And it just has been building blocks on top of each other. And one thing I realized too about astrology is it is like a language. So the more people that you talk to about it and use in real time, the more you'll learn it. You'll suddenly be thinking about things in astrological terms that with just ease and effort. It takes time. And I think one of the things that is really beautiful about the whole process is that you can tell that it's integrating into your life. Definitely communities are important though. I think that was the biggest thing for me was I went to an astrology conference in 2018 called UAC, the United Astrology Conference. I remember I didn't know half of what anyone was talking about at the time, but I think about that experience a lot because I realized that I learned so much just from sitting and listening to people talk about things that at the time I didn't really understand. So just keep going and trust that it will come together.
Can I ask you also a personal question in terms of how you manage your time? Would you say that you, as a deep diver, you had to make a decision to say no to maybe older habits of watching other stuff that is not related to astrology? Did you have to like become more disciplined about, saying no to other distractions? How are you in that regard? Because I find often with people who are necessarily deep divers, they have the habit of honoring their old habits of maybe watching movies several times a week or shows or doing other stuff that is really just a distraction, time spent, versus when I see people who are rapidly approaching expansion and new experience in their life, they are better at saying no to distractions and really focus on that one topic that is important to them. And then, magic happens much, much faster. How was that for you, like that too?
I feel like my astrological practice had to be really mindful, just like I'm getting to a level where my energy and mind and how I show up needs to be a certain way for me to feel like I'm connected to God source energy and channeling properly so that I can basically be of service better. I do think energetically, I've been saying no to a lot more things so that I can be in a pure channel line. I've had to really be aware of blocking out my time so that I can focus on sewing, for example, and not be worried about celestial connections reports. But when I am having a day, it's I think of my time as themes. I theme my days so that I can show up and be an authentic energy of whatever I'm doing for that day, because it's just really important to me to show up authentically. So I think, for me, I kind of full throttledly focus on something or I feel distracted. But that's also because of all the mutable energy that I have. I've watched myself kind of spin out through having so many hobbies and interests in my life. I've had to become really specific with my energy levels and how I show up.
Sounds like you're beautifully transitioning from the Gemini widespread into 1 hour of Sagittarius or 2 hours of Sagittarius, the art and the astrology. So really well done. Really kudos to you for navigating this so skillfully. Such a pleasure meeting you, Liz. Thank you for coming on, and may be blessed with many incredible client sessions. We look forward to staying connected, and much love to everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Cheerio.
Yeah.